Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about Nemesis Quests, which is one of the newer things that Riot have really started to embrace and do a lot more of over the last couple of months. Now, Nemesis Quests are technically nothing new to League of Legends. They've existed all the way back since Season 3, when we had a Nemesis Quest with Rengar and Kha'Zix when they both first came out. And since then, Riot have added a couple over time. We got one for the War in the Freljord with Ashe, Lissandra, and Sejuani. We got another one more recently with Senna, Thresh, and Lucian. But it was the kind of thing that was few and far between, and that it really didn't feel like Riot had a vested interest in doing more of. Until now. Towards the tail end of 2023, Riot patched a ton of new Nemesis quests onto the PvE. These involved quests between Nasus and Renekton, Zed and Shen, and Bel'Veth and Jax, all of which I think are really cool and fluffy ways of showcasing these champions having it out for each other and being able to compete with each other in-game for actual tangible in-game rewards. The War of the Freljord one, unfortunately, doesn't have any rewards besides the little crown that appears above the champion's head that wins, which is nice, but doesn't actually do anything with the champion, versus the Nemesis quests, which really do have an opportunity to empower your champion. There were another two added as well after the release of the Still Here cinematic. We got one for Kayle Morgana versus Aatrox, as well as one for Tryndamere and Kindred, all of which are extremely cool, and which I'm really a big fan of Riot doing more of these. However, they haven't gotten all of the champions that have it out for each other. I think there are a ton of champions that have rivalries with each other, and that would definitely take any opportunity to go for each other's throats. And today I wanted to talk about some of these other rivalries and give you guys an idea about the future Nemesis quests that I hope get added to the game. I've got a list of 5 of these, so let's go ahead and count them down, starting off with the number 5 one, which is Azir versus Xerath. Now, this is a bit of a deep cut, but I think Azir and Xerath have a very interesting dynamic when it comes to a Nemesis quest. They have a very long and sordid past with each other. Azir befriended Xerath, who was a slave at the time, and actually gave him his name. Then Xerath, to try and help Azir ascend to the throne, murdered his way through the Shuriman line of succession because Azir had promised to get rid of slavery if he ever became the Emperor. Azir became the Emperor, then didn't get rid of slavery immediately, so Xerath then plotted Azir's downfall, but then Azir announced that he was going to get rid of slavery after Xerath's plan was kind of already in motion, so Xerath still betrayed him and killed him, but then Azir came back to life, centuries later, and now they still have it out for each other, right? Azir is betrayed by Xerath, he wants to get revenge on Xerath, and Xerath, of course, is all for just destroying Azir. He at this point has given up on his friend. He's like, no, you're going to die no matter what. And I think this has led to a very interesting dynamic between the two, and I think they would make for a very cool Nemesis quest. I think primarily this is because any quest they have could be very fluffy. Azir is trying to establish his empire, and Xerath is trying to tear it down. And both are actually relatively decent in-game sieges. Xerath has extremely powerful poke and wave clear, which allows him to control the waves and make it so you can't push his own towers, versus Azir, who has very similar goals, but also can summon his own tower on destroyed ruins, right? Which allows him to kind of play in the sort of same space and compete with each other. As a result, it's pretty easy to come up with a Nemesis quest. Maybe each champion needs to destroy a tower that's defended by their rival. We can say if the champion needs to be within a few hundred units of the tower, or destroy 3 towers before their rival does. As a result, therefore, there's a bit of a push and pull back and forth, which is sort of what the war in Shurima currently looks like, which is quite nice. The winner's boost here I don't think needs to be super crazy, like maybe Azir can store an additional Sand Soldier, or Xerath gets extra shots on his ultimate, but either way I think it would be a very cool Nemesis quest to have in-game, especially because these champions do directly compete against each other in lane, which makes it for an interesting scenario. The 4th Nemesis quest I want to take a look at here is Ryze versus Brand, which this is another super deep cut. But Brand and Ryze have been set up as rivals with each other following Brand's story update a few years ago. Brand was changed to be a magically gifted Freljordian that Ryze tried to train, but who was never really able to accept the lessons that Ryze tried to teach him. And then when Ryze finally found the world rune that he was hunting, Brand fell for the power that the rune was offering him and had his entire body burned away until just his blazing soul remained. And now he's like totally hungering for the power that the world runes offer, and sort of acts as a competitor with Ryze to find the world runes first. He wants to claim the power of the world runes for himself. Ryze naturally is trying to keep them secret, keep them safe, and as a result we kind of have this interesting fun dynamic, and both mages in game are very similar. They're both combo oriented mid lane mages, which is very interesting to me. The quest here is a little hard to come up with. Unfortunately, I would love to do something where Ryze and Brand are competing for world rune fragments, but there's no real way to do that in game without I guess, trying to tell people, like, yeah, we're going to spawn things on the map to allow them to compete over for this quest, which would be very cool, but maybe not something that Riot wants to do. Maybe it's something along the lines of collecting buffs, like who can, you know, acquire red or blue buff first, or something along those lines, or Baron Nashor buff, and there's like a certain amount of points you get for each buff. I'm not sure on this one, but I really want them to have a Nemesis Quest together, because I do feel like they are very opposed to each other, and it would be really cool. The rewards could also be kind of crazy, I think, for this. For example, saying that Ryze W always casts as its empowered version for the root, or things like Brand's Q always stuns. Could be some very cool changes made, but you could also go very simple and just say, Brand passive does more damage, Ryze passive gives more AP, something along those lines. But either way, I think these two would make for another really cool Nemesis Quest I'd love to see Riot add. The number 3 on this list is Kassadin versus Malzahar. And now we already have a Void-based Nemesis Quest with Jax versus Bel'Veth, but I don't think we can ignore the OG Void rivalry in Kassadin versus Malzahar. In the old lore even, Malzahar was directly responsible for throwing Kassadin's daughter into the Void. Like, literally, it said, I threw Kassadin's daughter in the Void. That's where we got the whole Kassadin's daughter champion idea that was floating around for years before we ended up with Kai'Sa. The two also fought each other outside of the League of Legends once. Kassadin tried to literally assassinate Malzahar. It didn't happen. Karthus was also there. Old lore was weird. But either way, since the lore changed though, Malzahar is still responsible for Kai'Sa ending up in the Void. Malzahar enacted a ritual to help call the Void forth into Runeterra, which opened a rift in the ground that Kassadin's young daughter Kai'Sa fell into. Losing his family to the Void, Kassadin basically forsook his entire life, tracked down the nether blade of the ancient Shreeman Ascended, and then decided he was going to go full Batman on the Void and just spend his entire life in opposition of their force. If he found out that Malzahar is the one who enacted the ritual, he would absolutely go full Batman on Malzahar, which I think then still makes this work in context of the new lore. For a Nemesis Quest, I think it would be interesting to have Kassadin try to kill as many Void-themed units as possible, where Malzahar just needs to kill Kassadin enough times to make him eventually give up in his quest. In this regard, I think the new overhaul to Summoner's Rift works really well for this. We have a lot more Void-themed objectives. Rift Herald, the new Void Grubs, Baron Nashor, but also the Void Blue, Void Red, and Void Scuttler. And additionally, I think it could be cool to say, hey Kassadin, if the enemy team has more Void champions on it, killing them also counts. Meanwhile, Malzahar just needs to kill Kassadin, plain and simple, which makes for an interesting dynamic, where Kassadin's trying to play the PvE game, and Malzahar is sort of encouraged to seek him out and try to take him down. If Kassadin wins, I think it would be cool to increase the amount of magic damage reduction he gets from his passive. The Void Stone is one of the reasons why he's been able to avoid his whole body being corrupted by the Void, which I think would be then a cool and fluffy thing to buff up. And if Malzahar wins, we could either increase Void Shift's duration when he's damaged to give him a little bit of an extra window of invulnerability, or give him an extra Voidling charge so he can summon 3 of his little goobers as opposed to just the 2. I think it's only 2, but you guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong down in the comment section below. Either way, they're some of the OG rivalries, and I really feel like we need to get them on a Nemesis Quest stat. Speaking of OG rivalries, though, number 2 on this list is Miss Fortune versus Gangplank. This is another one of the original rivalries, and even got an entire event for it back in the day in the Burning Tides event. Gangplank originally killed Miss Fortune's parents in his quest to get Mama Fortune's masterwork pistols that she was making for him, and then said, no, you can't have, so he murdered her. Miss Fortune ended up taking up those guns and hunting down Gangplank and eventually blowing up his ship with him on it, but Gangplank didn't die, and then there was the whole Ruined King thing where Gangplank was kind of used as a pawn to bring Viego back, and Miss Fortune fought against Viego, but then eventually fell to Ruination. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. Suffice to say, at the moment, Miss Fortune and Gangplank are still absolute rivals with each other, not only competing over power of the over Bilgewater, but also they have their own personal beefs with each other. I would love to maybe say just after a certain period of time, maybe after level 11, they just have to kill each other. That's the quest. It's simple, but it's also the most fitting for each other. There's so much bad blood between the two. All they want to do is take each other down. Whomever wins, I think we could have a couple of fun places to buff. Gangplank, for example, could get extra damage on his passive, or we give him extra waves on his ultimate, which could be very powerful, versus Miss Fortune, who could get extra movement speed from her W passive, or she could get extra waves on her ultimate, sort of buffing up the ultimate damage either way, which would be kind of fun. Either way, they're one of the OG League of Legends rivalries, and I'd love to see a Nemesis Quest for these two champions. Finally, I wanted to talk about the final OG rivalry of Leona versus Diana. Now, I know some of you are going to say, but Hell Might, they're in love with each other. Why do they need a rivalry crest? And while it's true they are, one of the original pillars that Iron Stylus had for Leona and Diana was what could be more tragic than having to kill someone you love, which I think is a very interesting dynamic to this, in that you sort of don't want to win, but also you sort of want to win at the same time. And there is enough bad blood between the two that I think you could still make it work. Like, Leona is the icon of the Solari. She is the chosen of the sun and represents everything that's wrong about the Solari to Diana, right? The Solari who oppressed Diana's people and literally tried to purge them years ago. Versus Diana, who killed the entirety of the Solari elders, which, you know, Leona, I don't think is going to just take that lying down. And part of the issue between them is that there is still this bad blood between them. I don't think each other knows where they stand, and as a result, I think you can still make a Nemesis quest work for them in League of Legends. Because Leona is sort of defined by being a protective soul, which is completely an opposite to her gameplay, but suffice it to say that's the direction we're going to go for. I think Riot could take a similar approach to how Zed and Shen's Nemesis quest works, where Diana has to kill non-Leona champions that Leona is near, and Leona has to take down Diana while she has friends nearby. So if Diana picks off Leona, it doesn't matter. If Leona somehow kills Diana on her own, it doesn't matter. Like, Leona needs friends nearby, and Diana needs to kill those friends near Leona. I think if Leona wins, you give her passive slightly increased damage or increase the damage reduction she gets from her W, and Diana winning could either increase the duration of her W or increase the damage of her passive. Either way, I think this would be extremely interesting dynamic for these champions to have, and I think they absolutely work for a Nemesis quest. But you'll have to let me know which Nemesis champions you want to have a quest for in-game down in the comment section below. There are a ton that I couldn't get to, so if you've got a good idea, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.